analyst for the worldwide leader in sports and author of this book, radio audience, that I have on my desk right here, Life is Not an Accident, a Memoir of Reinvention. Jay Williams. Good to see you, Jay.
It's good to be on here, Rich.
How are you?
I'm doing great.
Good to have you here. We'll talk a lot about your book here.
By the way, big fan of the show.
Thank you.
Big fan of the show. Just saw a segment about you doing the dash and the sprinting with the suit on. I like it.
You know, I only know one speed, Jay. That's it.
$6 billion speed,
well,
apparently.
Yes, $6 billion. I've you know, it's the 21st century. You gotta upgrade. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate that, man. I appreciate you being here. So when you see an ending like that in the NCAA tournament, everyone's saying that's the greatest ending of all time, maybe even in any championship game. What do you say, Jay?
You know, I'm a big fan of the game, Rich. But in my generation, this is the best ending to a national championship game I've ever seen. Now, I'm not, taking anything away from Lorenzo Charles back in '83. I was 2 years old back then, so I hear people recount the story, but I wasn't there to actually see it. And I actually thought the game itself wasn't that great. I thought the refereeing was horrible.
What in particular?
Just all the calls. I mean, you get to a championship game, just let the kids play. I feel like there are a lot of tic-tac calls. There are some questionable calls against North Carolina. But at the last minute of the game, I mean, that's what we waited for the entire NCAA tournament. Second weekend was lacking a little bit, but the Final Four made up for it. Well, the championship game made up for it, not the Final Four.
Now, would you criticize Roy Williams for the defense on the final play?
You can always go back and criticize people. I would have had somebody on the ball. I think by not having somebody on the ball, Bryce Johnson was in no man's land.
Guarding the inbound.
Guarding. Well, that was Chris Jenkins. Yeah, exactly.
From the get-go.
Because then you trail with him. I mean, you try to get back into play, but at least it helps everybody know. You see him right here. Just how about the pass by Arcidiacono? I mean, how about the fact that, look, I know me, my last year in school, I'm taking that shot.
You're shooting that.
I'm coming down trying to get around somebody and shoot it. But that goes to show you who this Villanova team is. I mean, they're so selfless. They're unselfish. They passed the ball. They made it was an easy play because North Carolina actually gave it to him, actually, in the end.
And Arcidiacono passed it. It's interesting that you'd say that. He knows this is it, right?
Exactly.
This is
That's
it.
what I'm saying.
And so you would think that the mentality, your mentality would have been, I'm shooting that ball?
Well, with 4.6 seconds left,
that's it.
Right? The ball's in my hands. I'm speed dribbling the ball down the floor.
Yeah.
I'm looking to see who's coming at me, what are different ways I can attack. Right? But the beautiful thing about this team, and I think it's really good, is very underrated. How about the fact that he heard Chris Jenkins yell for the ball? He heard Chris Jenkins yell for the ball in the midst of 75,000 people.
Right.
75,000 people cheering, yelling, screaming at them. He heard his teammate and made the easy pass.
Do you ever have a loss like that? Anything like that?
I
know Duke doesn't lose very often.
We never lose.
I understand that.
We never lose.
I understand that.
I did have one bad loss my last year in school. It was actually, we were playing against Indiana, and we were down 4. Daniel Ewing came down the right side of the floor, shot a 3 as time was dwindling down, like 4 seconds. The ball naturally, by divine intervention, bounces back to me at the three-point line. I jump up in the air, kick my feet out. I make the 3. I get fouled by Dan Fife, but I missed the free throw at the end of the game. That's how we lose. Jay
Williams from ESPN, author of Life is Not an Accident, a memoir of reinvention, here on The Rich Eisen Show. Your coach, Coach K, came under some fire for his comments.
Just a tad.
Well, I mean, but many people thought he got a pass because of who he is from analysts, of sports analysts, to, I don't know if you saw Samuel L. Jackson was tweeting out that the apology was something that should have been more criticized. Does Coach K normally do that? Go up to a player and say, you should be better than that?
No, he doesn't, but I have seen him mentor players before. Now, look, this thing is twofold because I know him, but it's also my job to be objective as an analyst.
Sure.
So as a player, I've seen him do that from time to time. I just think from the analyst perspective right now, being objective, the timing was very poor. A couple reasons for that. Number one, you have a kid on your team in Grayson Allen who has tricked people multiple times. And the media and other people have been calling out to say, hey, this is a kid you need to suspend. Now, the ACC, after the second time it happened, chose not to suspend the kid. And then Coach K chose not to suspend the kid. That's fine. That's his decision. But then in the moment after you lose a game to Oregon like that, now, I don't think it was about the shot the kid made at the end. I think the kid may have said something or done something after he made the shot. So I see where he's trying to go, but the timing about doing that after the game is over, after you've lost, when there's a player in your team that people didn't feel you reprimanded the correct way, the timing's very poor, and it doesn't pan out well for him.
Yeah, especially since the kid apologized to him too. I mean, that is Coach K coming at you in a
What
way
are you supposed to say
on the
as a kid?
handshake line, right?
Exactly.
Puts everybody in a tough position.
I was surprised Dana Altman didn't handle that as well. I mean, I thought he would be a little bit more aggressive in response. But look, it's Coach K. He's a Hall of Famer, and he tries to do everything by the right way. But at the same time, Coach K is human, and could his apology have been better? Sure. But he also makes mistakes. I mean, we all make mistakes. I'm not condoning those mistakes, but he is human.
I asked this of Grant Hill a couple of weeks ago, so I'll ask it of you. How much longer do you think he's going to stay on the sideline there at Duke?
I don't know, man. USA basketball just rejuvenates him all the time. Now you have the Olympics coming up, and Grayson Allen, I heard today, just announced that he's staying. Mm-hmm. I'm telling you right now, some of the dudes they have coming in next year, I called the McDonald's All-American game. Harry Giles is a man. He'll be a low-post threat. Mm-hmm. Jason Tatum is a second-rated player in the nation behind Harry Giles, who reminds me of Grant Hill. Mm-hmm. And this kid, Frank Jackson, is built like me and is way more athletic than I ever was my freshman year and is a better player than I was. You think about what this team could be, they will be the number one favorite next year to win the whole thing. So as long as he has Jeff Capel by his side, helps him recruit and get some of these big guys in and he closes the deal, I don't see him going anywhere anytime soon.
Is Capel the heir apparent, do you think?
I don't know who the heir apparent is, to be honest with you. Johnny Dawkins was, the head coach of Stanford. He just lost that job. What is Steve Wojciechowski doing at Marquette? If he starts winning, maybe you can see that because Steve Wojciechowski reminds me very much of Coach K. The way they carry themselves, it's pretty much they're cut from the same cloth.
No kidding.
I'm telling you, it's unbelievable.
Out of everybody that's been through there and has gone into the coaching ranks, he's the one.
He's another kid. And you think about how they resemble each other. He's another kid that didn't have all the athletic talent in the world, but he had to think the game through and had to play the game at such a high level, intensity-wise.
Yes.
That's where him and Coach K always found that connection. They connected in that capacity. So I see him, Chris Collins, maybe Jeff Capel. I say Steve Wojciechowski's still probably the highest person on the list.
Jay Williams here on the Rich Eisen Show. Ask him the poll question at richeisenshow.com. A poll question that, admittedly, we would never have asked in the last 5 months of this program.
Okay.
But now have because of back-to-back home losses for the Warriors against the Celtics and the Timberwolves.
Would we have asked this question 5 days ago?
Not
no way, yeah.
Not a chance.
Who you got to win the NBA championship, Jay? Golden State or the field?
If you had to take the Warriors still.
I take the field. I take San Antonio Spurs.
Why do you say that?
Just because
Over 7 games now.
Over 7 games.
7 games. You got to go. And I know what I saw. Clearly, we all saw what the Spurs did to the Warriors the last time they faced them. Where, I mean, the minute Curry crossed half court, he didn't have a second to breathe, and everybody from Parker to Duncan was coming at him on switches.
Now, granted, in that game, they didn't play without some of their key players.
Correct.
So
Iguodala wasn't there.
was out. Yeah, exactly. But I would say, though, the one thing... Now, look, they can accomplish both. They can get this record potentially if they win their next 4 straight. But I just like the way everything feels about the way Pop has had his team get ready for this moment. You know what I mean? And I'm not taking anything away from Golden State. They obviously have a chance to achieve something spectacular. So, there's only one team to ever do that, Jordan, obviously, with 72 wins. But I will also say that I feel like San Antonio's focus is on winning a championship, whereas Golden State has been so consumed with getting this record. And it's something that they've spoken about. How do you not get lost in that battle? And when you're watching some of these games played at the end of the year, they're playoff intensity caliber games. I mean, these guys are really playing. Where you see other teams, well, like, what's LeBron James doing? He's chilling on the bench, resting, right? Like, what's San Antonio doing? Like, I don't know if Pop is going to... I don't see Pop, if it comes down to it, I think Pop will play his guys
Thursday night.
That last game.
Well, Thursday night, they're in Oakland.
I don't think he'll play them in Oakland, but I think when they go back home, he'll play his guys. He'll play his guys to get ramped up for the playoffs. That's the last game leading into the playoffs.
Well, I mean, I think it's definitely the second to last game.
Is it second to last game?
Well, for the Warriors.
For the Warriors,
that.
okay.
It could be for the Spurs. I don't know their schedule directly off the top of my head. I don't know. I took the Warriors. I still think the Warriors.
You still think the Warriors?
Yeah. Because you know how this works. I mean, you can flip a switch. You can get back to what you're getting back to when it all comes down to it.
You can. You most definitely can.
Right?
I like the fact that if there's a team that can switch multiple positions and they can still play small,
that's it.
That's San Antonio.
Okay. When we come back, I want to talk about this book.
Okay.
It's very moving. It's a terrific it's the moral of the story is something that's very important that I want you to get out there to the radio and television audience. The author of Life is Not an Accident, a memoir of reinvention, Jay Williams from ESPN, from Duke, and obviously a man who spent some time with the Chicago Bulls before everything changed on a very fateful day on a motorcycle. He is here on the Rich Eisen Show, back with that story in 60 seconds. He was an NCAA champion and a stellar standout player at Duke, the 2002 John Wooden Award winner and National College Player of the Year, and then the second overall pick of the 2002 NBA draft behind now Naismith Hall of Famer Yao Ming. Here on the Rich Eisen Show, Jay Williams. But instead of talking about all that...
I was going to say, seriously, out of all the years, God descends a 7'6" Chinese man upon me that year? Like, really? Really? Like, not the year before, the year after? Thanks, Yao.
Of all those years.
Yes.
But then comes the day, June 15th, 2003, that is the centerpiece of this book. Jay Williams wrote Life is Not an Accident, a memoir of reinvention. Walk me through that day that you got on that motorcycle in June of 03.
Rich, it was one of those years where, look, my 3-year record at Duke was 95-13, okay? So when you lost a game in college, it was as if somebody died, right? That's how it was treated afterwards in your preparation for the next game. Then I get to the NBA, and it's this dream you've been waiting for all your life, but you realize your team is very fragmented. You have a lot of young players. Everybody's trying to vie to get a bigger and better contract. Jamal Crawford and I are pitted against each other. Jalen Rose, literally the first game after we beat the Boston Celtics, calls me a choke artist. To the media, you read about it the next day. So there's a lot of dissension. It feels very divisive within the team, where, the team usually for me has been a safe haven. So I got lost that year. I got lost into the fame that came along with it. I got lost into some of the drugs. Guys smoking marijuana before games. I didn't do it before games, but I partook in that kind of stuff in the off time. The gambling that came along with it, seeing guys lose $40,000 to $50,000 on a plane ride. I lost thousands of dollars doing that. It took me less than a year to become somebody I didn't even recognize. And to lead into that day, I literally went to Durham the night before. I was doing a camp for Coach K, played against J.J. Redick. Chris Collins pulled me, he was like, dude, what the hell have you been doing? Like, your game has changed drastically. Like, you're ready to really explode on the scene. Because I finally started to find myself, like, the last 10 to 15 games in the Bulls uniform. We started to play a lot more, just running gun basketball instead of the triangle. Left Durham after I partied that night, came back to Chicago, went in to have a practice, went against Jamal Crawford, played extremely well, drove back downtown to take a nap because I was still hungover from the night before, okay? And then I had to go have a meeting with my agent, with this guy about a website. Go over to the house, decide to take my motorcycle out that day. Shouldn't have had a bike, but you're also not allowed to go jet skiing or cliff diving, anything like that, right? So you find a way of justifying things. Other guys have bikes as well. And go over to the house, have a meeting, leave the house. My agent's like, you shouldn't be on that bike. I looked at him, I shouldn't be doing a lot of things, Kevin. Get on the bike, go in, rev the engine first time. Didn't have a helmet on. There's no helmet law in Chicago. Rev the engine first time, extremely loud. Second time, louder than the first, as you obviously can see the bike right there. Third time, louder than the second. In the middle of the rev, I heard the bike go click, click. And next thing you know, the bike popped up from underneath me. Instead of letting go, I tried to grab onto it because I wanted to save my investment. And when I held on to the handlebars even more, it pulled back the throttle on the right-hand side. And the bottom wheel spun out. And the next thing you know, I hit a utility pole going 70+ miles per hour. And it clipped the whole left side of my body. And my chest, when I land, Rich, is laying up on the grassy knoll area between the sidewalk and the curb. My navel is pressed up against the curb, but my legs are laying on the pavement as if I'm laying on my side.
Oh, my God.
And it's just one of those things where it felt like somebody was pouring hot, scalding water all over the lower portion of my body, but I kept rubbing my legs, and I didn't see any blood. But it's the weirdest feeling to have your hands touch your legs, but your legs not feel your hands touch your back. And I just started screaming out right then and there. I threw it all away. I knew my life.
You said that?
I said it. In that moment, I started screaming out. I threw it all away. I threw it all away. I threw it all away, nonstop. Because I felt like here I was. I was in the precipices of achieving this dream I've been waiting for my whole life, and I made an idiotic decision, and here I am, laying on the curb, bleeding to death.
So I guess what happens next for you? What happened after that?
I got rushed to the hospital. I was still in so much shock. I was able to call my parents, let them know I was hurt. And I never forget, her name was Dr. Mallet. When I was, being gurneyed in, the guys from the ambulance told me I had broken a couple of bones. But look, I was a rambunctious kid. I had broken bones when I was younger. Didn't feel like I broke any bones. And her name was Dr. Mallet. She grabbed my hand. She said, "Look, we need to do surgery right now. You're bleeding internally. We need to stop the bleeding." And next thing you know, I get put on this this plate, this kind of sterile, iron table, and she's counting me to go to sleep. And I wake up hours later, and I have a tube down my throat. I have 3 metal pins inserted into my knee, one into my shin, my knee, my thigh, and 2 metal rods that came out of my pelvis. And it was like one of those. It was like a general hospital soap opera.
So what was more difficult for you in the months and years that followed? The physical comeback, trying to come back with the nets, and then realizing that you did in fact throw it all away, or the mental aspect of all of it? Which was tougher for you?
The physical was painful because obviously all the surgeries, 13 plus surgeries, but the mental side of it, I just barely escaped that about 5 years ago. Every single day.
This happened in 2003.
Yeah, tell me about it. 10 plus years to get over that. Well, the thing is, every single time I walk outside in the public, I have people that remind me of what I threw away. You know what I mean? And look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you it didn't hurt when I watched the Bulls draft Kirk Heinrich when I was in my hospital bed. I was in my hospital bed watching a team that I had been dreamed of playing for my entire life draft another point guard that I just competed against and felt like I had dominated the year before. Was I angry when the Bulls got Derrick Rose and he's the next savior of Chicago and he signs a $100 million deal with Adidas, the same company I was with? Yeah, you hold all that resentment towards yourself, though. And that led me to, having nerve pain. I severed my peroneal nerve, so my nerve strung into my foot it coiled up like pasta. And he said nerve regeneration takes 1 inch per month, but it feels like it's childbirth. So any given time for 6 years, somebody would just stab me in the leg with a dull knife, any given time, and I would scream out in pain. So I got addicted to OxyContin, which lasted for, 7 years, where even when I was done playing basketball, I was still taking it because I was angry, and I didn't want to deal with. The worst thing that ever happened to me was seeing a little kid. When you're an athlete, you see a little kid, when they look at you, it's a look of awe. This look of, how do I get to where you are? And how that look changed from everybody, a look of pity and sorrow and, God, I can't believe you did this to yourself. You threw it all away. I knew what people were saying. I mean, I'm forced to almost in a way preach about making mistakes now to other people.
Jay Williams' book, Life is Not an Accident, a Memoir of Reinvention. So what made you turn the corner? Was there an epiphany, a moment that you can pinpoint that, yes, I turned the corner right there?
It was after my second suicide attempt. I had one when I was bedridden for multiple months after I got released from the hospital, 4.5 months after my injury. And the second was I was living on the Lower East Side. I just got done playing basketball, played for the D-League, Austin Turtles. My head coach, literally after I tore my hamstring off my bone, had to go home for a week. Dennis Johnson passed away on the basketball court. He was my coach. And I'm like, what am I? I was angry. What am I doing all this for? Why am I chasing this ghost? And I was living on the Lower East Side, working for a sports agency. We had just got done trying to recruit Kevin Love, who's from the LA area. The recruiting didn't go too well because Yahoo broke the story because we had given a lot of money to his AAU team to have a chance for me and Kevin to have a relationship. And Kevin, I read an article that day. Kevin Love said, "Why would I ever sign with an agent? I was idiot enough to ruin his whole career. Like, why would I ever go with a guy like that?"
Holy crap.
And was angry, went home to the Lower East Side, proceeded to go to a bar, drank myself into a frenzy, and had a drug dealer back then, Rich. Got a package from him, went over to my apartment and took multiple OxyContin and drank a half bottle of Jack and said, "I hope it's over." And to my blessing, I woke up the next morning and it got to a point where I was like, what am I doing? Who am I becoming? And it was the first time I started paying attention to people on TV. And I'm like, maybe I need to change up who's on the Jay Williams board. My drug dealer was on my board at the time. People who were just drinking and partying a lot were on my board. And it's like, maybe I should start surrounding myself with people who hold me to higher standards than how I hold myself to.
And you're doing so well, Jay.
I'm getting there.
Well, but I mean, I watch you on the Worldwide Leader all the time.
Thank you.
You're excellent at what you do. And how you've turned it around is truly remarkable. And that's why people should get this book. Again, Life is Not an Accident, a memoir of reinvention. Can you stick around for one more second?
Yeah, I'm with you, man.
We're going to chat some more with Jay Williams. Don't go anywhere. This is a fascinating conversation and one well worth staying tuned for to listen to. Jay Williams here on The Rich Eisen Show in a moment. Jay Williams here in The Rich Eisen Show. There's a conversation by Shaughnessy, who I respect very much in Boston. It's basically like, no thanks. They kind of make it boring, bad for the sport that they're so good.
I don't watch the games, though. I pay attention to the betting lines. What? You talking about there's one sure thing to bet on. I bet on them.
There were 26 and a half friends last night.
Yeah.
And they covered.
And they covered. In the championship game. By the way, after they won, they had a knighting ceremony. Who does that? Like, 2 of the girls got knighted last night, like with the sword. Did you see that?
4-time MOP. That's incredible. Could you imagine?
4 straight titles.
For Brianna Stewart.
Championships.
She's the best. She's the best college women's player I've ever seen.
You really? Because there's been some great ones.
I mean, I've ever seen. I haven't seen, but I started to pay attention to it with Diana Taurasi. But I mean, I say she's the greatest women's UConn player.
Jay Williams here on The Rich Eisen Show. I've got 4 minutes left. I want to take a phone call.
Yeah, sure.
Lonnie in Chicago has called him before. You're on with Jay Williams here on The Rich Eisen Show.
Hey, how you doing? Jay, I remember when you got drafted. I'm the DePaul University alumnus.
Okay.
I remember when you got drafted. I feel for you. You never know God's plan for you. Maybe your mistake was made to save several other kids from making a mistake. You have to look at it like that as well. I hate Duke, but I learned to like you.
That may be the highest praise.
Yes.
Look, man, I know a lot of ball players. I even tried to get Doc Rivers to come to DePaul University, but for some reason he chose Marquette. My little brother played on Indiana's last Final Four team. Look, man, your life is more than basketball. And I'm going to buy your book now.
Well, thank you.
Life is not an accident.
On the show.
A memoir.
I'm going to buy your book because your book is going to save a lot of kids, dude.
What do you think? What do you think when you hear that? Thanks for the call, Lonnie.
Well, first off, I hated Duke too when I was younger. I wanted to go to school at North Carolina. I got turned down, so that's why I ended up going to Duke. I fell in love with Coach K. Got infatuated with the program from that point on. And secondly, I agree with him. I used to look at my life through the prism that was a mistake forever, and then I see the path I'm on right now, and I sit there and say, no. Like that's called a purpose, and I look at how many lives I'm able to touch now and the way I'm able to talk to kids or people in general. And I don't know who I would have been if I would have signed a max deal or, played multiple years in the league and became aloof and standoffish, which we see so many athletes do because you respect their personal, their private life.
Right.
I talk about my life openly now, and I hope that others can learn from me.
My gosh, do you ever, Jay? I mean, you have been putting it right on your sleeve today, and it's all throughout this book. Again, Life is Not an Accident, a memoir of reinvention. And the fact that, again, you're talking about how you were in a hospital bed and you saw your replacement come, and it's a guy that you dominated at the collegiate level. And then you're talking about other players that you've seen and you wondered about, like Derrick Rose. But now you're in a position where you analyze these guys. I mean, does that become even difficult for you in this job that you're doing that is it's doing well at such a high level, such a platform? When
people go through things, I have to take a hard stance on it. But I'm also the guy, I'll walk up to you and tell you exactly what I'm thinking. I'm always pulling for you. But if I disagree with something that you've done wrong, I'll say that. I used to hate the media when I was a player. I always felt like the media was after me. And now it's funny being on this side of it. I very much try to have open dialogue with people and say, hey, look, yes, I did say this, and let me tell you why. It doesn't stop me from having open conversation with you. But, Rich, I truly feel like this is just the beginning for me, man. I just found out what TV was from your angle when I was 24, 25 years old.
Right.
Literally, my first time, I'm responding to my producer in my IFB live on camera. I mean, people thought I had Tourette's. You know what I mean? It was that kind of a situation.
Well, what are you saying?
What are you saying?
Lord.
He's horrible.
Right.
But it was just one of those things where I love what I'm doing now, and there's a purpose behind it, man.
Get the book, everybody. I'm holding it up, radio audience. Here he is. There you are on the cover with that scar.
A lot
on
of
your
ab
left
work
knee.
done before that photo shoot, by the way.
So there's no photoshopping? This is just a photo shoot?
Maybe a splash. Maybe a splash.
This is Manganello-esque right here on the cover of Advanced Praise for Life is Not an Accident. Includes quotes from Greenie, from Grant Hill, Charles Barkley. And I'll give it to you right here, Jay. Please come back when you're in Los Angeles. I'd love to have you on in this show.
I was actually with Charles a long night, Final Four, and he was saying how much he loves you.
Oh, I love Charles too.
He's the best.
I go way back. There is a story about how Charles needed a spot to refresh before getting to the airport one day.
Refresh.
And it was my future wife/girlfriend's apartment.
Oh.
And I had no idea he was in there.
You sure we're not going to have another segment to hear that story?
Is this thing on? Go get this book, Life is Not an Accident, a Memoir of Reinvention with Jay Williams. You're the man. Please come back.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.